A football manager changes his formation. Completely normal. Happens every week across the league. But when you're 4 points above a relegation zone, that formation change has a headline, a Twitter thread, a YouTube reaction, 3 podcast episodes, Jamie O'Hara screaming on the telly or on the radio. Welcome to life under the microscope. This is what relegation actually does to a football club, and Spurs are living it in real time. Shadow Spurs here wanted to discuss the microscope effect that we are currently seeing within mainstream and non-mainstream media when it comes to Tottenham. And not a lot of people seem to be talking about it. And the reason for that is there does appear to be an agenda of sorts around Tottenham and relegation, and wanting that to happen from media outlets because of the story, clicks, views that it would generate. So we're looking at signal amplification today. Not the most glamorous of topics, it may seem, but actually very interesting when you dig into it. Because when Manchester City lose a game, the story, is, are Manchester City struggling? When Tottenham lose two in a row, the story is this the end of the football club? This isn't paranoia, it's media economics. Every action, and equally every inaction, gets assigned a meaning that it wouldn't carry in any other season, mid-table, top of the table. So I'll give you a few examples from this week and this season. So Tudor's come in, he switched to a back four at Fulham. Simple enough decision, you would think. Forget the fact that I will question that decision myself personally, given Tudor's determination to always stick to playing two strikers, two number 10s behind the striker. But he switches to a back four. It wasn't reported as an adaptation. It was reported as desperation. Every outlet framed it as Tudor gambling, panicking, running out of ideas. The switch didn't work. We lost to Fulham, 4 consecutive defeats, 10 league games without a win. That equals the club's worst Premier League run. Or it is now the worst, in Premier League history, because that dates back to Ardiles in 94. But the question that nobody's asking is, would a back four have been gambling if Spurs were 8th? Surely then it would have been tactical genius. It would have been flexibility. Same decision, completely different headline. The transfer window. In January, Spurs didn't make a signing that was statement. Picked up a young guy, Souza from Brazil. I think he could be something. He could be nothing. We don't know yet. Gallagher, I've made my feelings clear on Gallagher. I think he should be a good signing for the club. He's struggling a little bit at the moment, clearly, but that may be the Tottenham effect. But that story itself generated more column inches than most clubs get, period, full stop, about their club. If you look at body language, suddenly everyone has become a body language expert. People get, Romero gets a red card. Suddenly, we hear that, players don't want to fight for a club. A player walking off slowly off the pitch. Mid-table, nobody cares. And I have to say that the situation is dire, and we are reaping the rewards of decades, literally decades, of inaction on the footballing side of this club. And we've managed to stumble along in the last 5 years. I know Bilbao aside, I really don't want to bang on about, be told about Bilbao and that we won a trophy. I can assure you, I know I was there. But the thing that I find astonishing right now is that we are ultimately deciding our fate on other clubs. And that is something that's not being amplified. So it's almost this strange dichotomy of what to pick, that you amplify that would not nearly be usually be a story, and not actually report on what should be a story. Um, we we are genuinely in a relegation fight, depending on other clubs' results, because we can't see where the next win is coming from. And it feels that everything and anything that gets reported about this club is amplified to such an extent that it makes every single decision seem like a failure. It seems that every single action or inaction becomes this ultimately thing bigger than itself. And this amplification loop is ultimately what drags a lot of clubs into relegation and down, because that feedback loop starts to become their reality. And there's no confidence off the pitch, there's no confidence on the pitch. And I think that's something that has to be broken. I do not believe that Tudor did himself any favours coming out talking the way that he did. I know that he may have spoken the way that many of us feel at the moment, which is basically that everything is awful with regards to the club. The players can't run, they're not fit, they can't press. So he's not pressing, even though that's his whole ethos and formula in football is to press. So this amplification effect, it doesn't just describe the problem, it actually actively contributes towards it. And so if you think about what the Spurs players are trying to navigate, is every training session being photographed and analysed for who looked sharp and who looked disengaged and who moped off the pitch and who didn't, and what that means for the club. And then every post-match interview becomes dissected for whether the players care enough. Every squad member who's linked to a summer transfer is having it reported right now during the run-in, with the not so subtle implication that they're already mentally checked out. And, you know, Manchester United were told this week that they need to target a Spurs player in the summer, and we know who that is and what it is. The microscope doesn't wait for the final whistle. And what that constant scrutiny does to a squad that is already fragile in confidence is, and this Tudor said it himself, every game for the league becomes a final. And that mental energy, if you think about the mental energy that you need to put into a final, it becomes real and it becomes compounding. And then let's have a look at VAR for a second, because obviously we have legitimate grievance with some of the decisions that have gone against us this week. But would we be looking at that grievance differently? Yes, we would, absolutely, if we weren't in 4 points away from the relegation. Jimenez pushed Radu before the opening goal of Fulham. VAR allowed the goal. North London derby. Colomwani's goal was disallowed for a similar contact on Gabriel. Ruled out. Hugo Ekitike. He placed both hands on Romero when scoring for Liverpool. VAR allowed it. So there's no consistency, and often it seems that it's going against us. And the other statistic that's interesting is how many penalties have Spurs received this season? None. So then it all builds into this idea that there's a conspiracy against us. And if we try and look at where there is systemic inconsistency against Tottenham, we have to say that in a handful of games, these decisions were pivotal in deciding our fate. So then we're not looking at excuses. The performance has not been good enough, but there has been some truly shocking, inconsistent decisions. And that's amplified, magnified, and here we are going into a game against Palace on Thursday. A winnable game on paper, without a doubt. But have a look at what's under the microscope for this game. It's our first, it could be our first league win in 2026. It's essentially a relegation 6-pointer. So the injury list is long. Suspension's still affecting us, and anything other than a win will be reported as a chronic failure for this club, So essentially, what we need to do as a club, and I don't want to, I'm not a psychologist and I'm not going to pretend to be one, but we need to stop handing momentum to the teams below us so that this amplification crisis, everything becomes a drama, goes goes away just a little bit, you know. So we're not in media danger. We're in real danger. This is not Spurs are always in crisis. This is actual statistical. We're 4 points from going down. So everything from here, every selection, every press conference, every body language, every moment is going to be put under the microscope. And what we have to do is to cut through that noise, right? We have to draw a line in the sand. So I'm not here to give you false hope. I'm not here to say to you, don't panic, everything's fine. I believe, as I've said before, this team is more than good enough to get out of this situation. There is a team there somewhere. I know you're going to say we can't defend, we can't attack, we can't do anything at the moment. But right now, this game, and to put it in the context of this amplification of news, this is the most important game Tottenham have played in a good long while. I will be back with some other analysis and some news of other things that's going on. I got a couple of bits of insider info that I will share in good faith that I hear as I go through my day to day with my work. But I'm not going to sit here now and say, "Oh, I've got a feeling we're going to beat Crystal Palace on Thursday." But what I will say is, if we can block out the noise as a club, and as players actually take ownership of the situation and finally feel invested in the club, as us fans do, we've got a chance. And I truly believe, if we can impart anything to these players, is if they could even have an ounce of the emotional investment in this football club that we as players have, we'll be just fine. And that's what needs to be imparted. There needs to be a glimmer, a sliver of positivity, because right now, everything's negative, everything's amplified. Shadow Spurs out.